3:14 the morning. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. I grabbed it half asleep, expecting my mother, expecting bad news about her heart, expecting anything except the voice that came through. Don't start your car tomorrow. Don't touch it. Don't open the door. Don't go near it. It was Hector, my mechanic, the man who had fixed my Toyota for 3 years and never once called me. Not for an appointment, not for a quote, not for anything. He was crying. I could hear him trying to swallow it down. Hector, what is happening? Where are you? I can't tell you. I can't tell anyone. Just promise me. Promise me you won't go near that car in the morning. You're scaring me. Good. You should be terrified. Promise me right now. I promised. The line went dead before I could ask anything else. 6 hours later, I was standing in a hospital lobby watching a bomb disposal team pull something out from underneath my Toyota Corolla, and a federal agent was telling me that Hector was missing and that I was never supposed to wake up that morning. If you want to know who put it there and why, and how a 50-year-old mechanic in oil-stained coveralls ended up being the only thing standing between me and a closed casket funeral, hit subscribe before you go any further. Drop the city you're listening from in the comments. I read everyone. The reason I'm telling this story is because the only reason I'm alive to tell it is that someone, somewhere, decided to do the harder thing instead of the easier one. And I want to know how many of you have someone like that in your life. My name is Talia Brennan. I'm 31 years old. I work registration at a hospital emergency room in Sacramento. I'm the woman behind the glass who slides the clipboard at you while you're bleeding and tries to make you feel a little less afraid while you fill it out. I've done this job for 6 years. Before that, hotels. Before that, restaurants. I have spent my whole adult life watching strangers on the worst days of their lives. I thought I knew what fear looked like. I had no idea. I sat on the edge of my mattress with the phone still in my hand, listening to the silence after the call ended. My cat Misu was curled at the foot of the bed, watching me with her one folded ear flicked toward the sound. The green light of the smoke detector blinked on the ceiling. My apartment was on the second floor of a building I'd lived in for 4 years. I had never once been afraid in this apartment, not when the upstairs neighbor had screaming fights with his girlfriend at midnight. Not when someone had broken into the laundry room downstairs and stolen everyone's quarters. Not even the night a man had followed me from the bus stop and I'd had to duck into a 7-Eleven and call a cab. None of that had felt like this. This felt like something already in the room with me. I tried Hector's number. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. I went to my living room window and looked down at the parking lot. My Corolla was sitting in spot 14 where I'd left it the night before, lit orange by the sodium lights, looking exactly the same as it always looked. Nothing was near it. The street beyond was empty. A trash bag tumbled across the asphalt in the wind and I jumped like someone had touched my shoulder. I stood at that window for almost 2 hours. I didn't go back to bed. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, watching my car, watching the street, watching the corners of the lot where the lights didn't reach. At 5:30, I called my friend Dessa from work. Tali, the sun isn't even up. Tell me you're okay. I need a ride. I can't drive today. I'll explain when you get here. Please don't ask me anything until you get here. She didn't argue. That's the thing about Dessa. The only thing about Dessa I can ever explain to people who haven't met her. She has a sense for what is real and what is not, and she does not waste time. She showed up in 20 minutes in her little blue Hyundai. I climbed in without looking at my Corolla once. I waited until we were 2 blocks away to turn around and check that we weren't being followed. I don't know what I expected to see. I told her about the call on the way to work. I watched her hands tighten on the steering wheel. "We are calling the police the second we get there," she said. "And telling them what? That my mechanic told me not to drive?" "Yes. They're going to think I'm crazy." "Then they're going to think you're crazy." "Tali, you've known Hector for 3 years. Has that man ever once called you at 3 in the morning?" "No." "Then call them." I called from the parking lot of the hospital before I went inside. The dispatcher was patient with me. She took my information. She said an officer would meet me at work. I went in, clocked in, and tried to act like a human being. I checked in a man with a kitchen knife wound on his hand. I checked in a teenage girl whose stepfather brought her in for a panic attack. I helped an elderly woman fill out paperwork for her husband. who was being wheeled past me on a gurney with an oxygen mask on. The whole time, my hands were shaking and I was trying not to let anyone see. Officer Mahir Donato met me in the lobby at 8:15. He was maybe 40, calm, with a face that didn't move much. I told him the story. He took notes. He asked me what year my car was, what color, where it was parked. He asked me for Hector's full name, his shop's address, when I'd last seen him. I told him I'd dropped the car off 2 days earlier for an oil change. Hector had been completely normal, cracked a joke about my radio, quoted me on a new set of tires. Officer Donato wrote everything down. Then he asked me a question that made my stomach drop. "Miss Brennan, has anyone you know been involved in any kind of legal trouble recently? Family members, co-workers, friends, neighbors, anything at all?" "No." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I would know." He nodded slowly and closed his notebook. He wasn't humoring me. I could see it in his eyes. He'd already decided this was real. "I'm going to head over to your apartment building right now and take a look at the vehicle. I want you to stay here at work. Don't go home. Don't go to your car. If your mechanic calls you again, answer the phone and tell him to come to a police station. Any police station. Tell him we can keep him safe." He left. Dessa stood next to me at the registration desk, pretending to help me file paperwork, both of us watching my phone like it was a snake. It rang at 9:47. "Miss Brennan, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We've secured your vehicle. There was a device attached to the underside of it. We have a bomb disposal team on site. The vehicle is being towed to a federal facility. I need you to stay where you are. I am sending 2 officers to pick you up at the end of your shift and take you somewhere safe." I don't remember saying anything. I remember Dessa's hand on my shoulder. I remember a small boy in the waiting room asking his mother if I was okay. I remember the mother telling him to mind his business. I remember thinking she was wrong, that he was the only one in the room asking the right question. A bomb. Underneath my car. In my parking lot. While I slept. I want to stop here for 1 second. I know how this sounds. It sounds like a movie. It sounds like a story you read on the internet and close the tab and forget about. I'm telling you, this happened to me. To a 31-year-old hospital clerk who drives a Toyota with a dent in the door and a radio that only works if you smack the dashboard. There was no reason for it. I was no one. And that, I would learn within hours, was exactly the point. The 2 officers arrived at 4 in the afternoon and drove me, in an unmarked car, to a building downtown I'd never been inside. I was walked through a back entrance and put in a small windowless room with a bottle of water in front of me. A woman walked in a few minutes later. She was in her 50s, dyed red hair, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She introduced herself as Detective Yvonne Kraskin. She set a folder on the table and sat across from me. "Miss Brennan, I'm going to tell you what we know. I want you to listen. And then I'm going to ask you some questions." I nodded. 2 nights ago, your mechanic, Hector Salgado, was working late at his shop on a same-day repair. While he was inside, 2 men pulled into his lot. They didn't know he was in the building. We believe they used his lift to access the underside of a vehicle parked in the lot, attached an explosive device to the fuel line, and left. They were inside the shop for about 11 minutes. I could hear my pulse in my ears. Hector saw them. He hid in the bathroom and watched through the door. He didn't recognize the men, but he recognized the car they had worked on. It belonged to a customer who had dropped it off the previous afternoon for routine service. It was your car, Miss Brennan. The room got smaller. Hector waited until they left. He came out and looked at the device. Did you know he was a Marine? 2 tours. He knew exactly what he was looking at. He also knew that if he removed the device, whoever placed it would know it had been found and would come back. So he left it in place and tried to figure out what to do. Why didn't he call you right away? He called us first, the night before last, at 11:42 p.m. Officers were dispatched. By the time they got to the shop, the device was gone, and so was Hector. I stared at her. Where is he? She hesitated. We don't know. His phone last pinged a tower outside Stockton at 4 a.m. this morning, about 40 minutes after he called you. After that, nothing. We don't know if he's hiding, if he's been taken, or if he's been killed. I put my face in my hands. The paper cover on the table crinkled under my elbows. Why me? I said. I don't have enemies. I check people into an emergency room. I don't know anyone who would do this. Detective Kraskin opened the folder. Miss Brennan, the men who placed that device have been on a federal watch list for almost 2 years. They're connected to a money laundering operation that runs through several auto repair shops in Northern California. We've been trying to build a case against them. They are extremely careful. We have never been able to get close. She slid a photograph across the table. A man getting out of a black SUV. Baseball cap. Hooded sweatshirt. I looked at his face. I had never seen him before in my life. I don't know him. She slid another. An older man with a scar above his left eyebrow. I've never seen him either. She nodded, like she'd expected those answers. Miss Brennan, we don't think you were the target. I looked up. What? We think they got the wrong car. There was another customer at Hector's shop that day. A woman who drives the same year and color Toyota Corolla as you. She has connections we have been investigating for some time. We believe the men were supposed to plant the device on her vehicle, and instead they planted it on yours. I sat there for a long moment. So this whole thing was a mistake. Yes. Hector is missing because of a mistake. Yes. Someone almost killed me by accident. Yes. I started laughing. Not a real laugh. The kind of laugh that comes out of you when your brain runs out of normal reactions and just produces a sound. Detective Kraskin sat very still and let me laugh until I stopped. Miss Brennan, I have to ask you some difficult questions, and I need you to be honest with me. The people we are dealing with do not make many mistakes. When they do, they fix them quickly. What does that mean? It means that as of about 2 hours ago, when their device was disarmed in your apartment parking lot, they know they failed. They will be trying to find out why. They will be trying to find out who tipped you off, and they will be trying to make sure no one who knows about this is alive to talk about it. I felt my hand tighten around the water bottle. The plastic creaked. What do I do? Tonight you stay here. We have a safe location. Tomorrow we start talking about longer-term options. I am not going to lie to you. This is going to change your life for a while. Maybe a long while. I took a breath. It came out shaky. And Hector? She looked at me for a long time before she answered. We are doing everything we can. I want to break in here for just a minute. If you're listening to this in your car or while you're cooking dinner or while you're getting your kids ready for bed, I want you to do something small for me. The next time someone in your life does something for you that they didn't have to do, something that costs them their time or their comfort or even just a little bit of their peace of mind, tell them. Tell them out loud that you noticed. Tell them you're grateful. We don't do that enough. We assume the people who show up for us already know that we love them. They don't always know. And sometimes you don't get the chance to tell them later. I spent 4 nights in a hotel paid for by the federal government. The room had 2 locks on the door and a window that didn't open. There was an officer in the hallway around the clock. Dessa wasn't supposed to come, but she did. She brought me clothes, a phone charger, my toothbrush, and Misu in a cat carrier. I cried into her shoulder for what felt like 10 minutes, and she didn't say a word the whole time, just held me and let me ruin her sweater. On the 5th day, Detective Kraskin came to the hotel. She told me they had found Hector. He was alive. He had driven east the night he called me. He had thrown his phone out the window outside Stockton. He had taken a bus from a truck stop in Nevada to a small town in Idaho where his cousin lived. He had been hiding in the cousin's basement for 4 days, eating canned soup and watching the news, waiting to find out if I was dead. When the federal agents knocked on the cousin's door, Hector had come out with his hands up, crying. Sure, they were the men from his shop. Sure, they were there to kill him. The first thing he had asked, once he understood who they actually were, was whether I was okay. I was allowed to call him 3 days later. There was an agent on the line listening. We didn't say much. He asked about Misu. I asked about his cousin. We were both crying by the end of the call. Right before he hung up, he said, "Kid, I am so sorry." I told him he was the reason I was alive. He started crying harder, and the agent ended the call. The investigation went on for almost a year. I gave more statements than I can count. I sat in conference rooms with people from agencies whose names I didn't recognize. I learned more about money laundering and federal informant programs than I ever wanted to know. I never met the woman whose car they had been trying to bomb. I was told she was cooperating. I was told she was safe. I chose to believe it. The two men in the photographs were eventually arrested, along with 11 other people connected to their operation. Hector and I both testified. We did it from a small room with a closed-circuit camera, our faces obscured, our voices distorted. I never had to see the men in person. I was grateful for that. I don't drive a Corolla anymore. The federal program helped me relocate to a new city. I have a different last name on my paperwork now. I see my mother less than I used to. My brother and I write letters instead of texts because they are harder to track. Misu came with me. She is 8 now, still has the folded ear, still sleeps on my chest at night. Hector retired. He moved to be near his cousin. We email each other once a month. He sends me pictures of the dog he adopted, an old hound named Pancake. I send him pictures of Misu. We do not talk about that night. Here is what I keep coming back to, the thing I think about when I cannot sleep, which is more often than I want to admit. Hector did not have to call me. He had already called the police. He could have gone home, locked his door, and let the system handle it. He had already done his part, but he knew something most people pretend not to know. He knew that calls take time. He knew that paperwork moves slowly. He knew that I was a 31-year-old woman who got up at 6 in the morning and got into a car at 6:35 and drove to work without ever looking under it. And he knew there was a chance, even a small one, that something would go wrong between his first call and the bomb squad arriving. So at 3 in the morning, with men hunting him, with his hands shaking so hard he could barely hold his phone, he called me. Not because he had to, because he could not live with the alternative. There is a kind of person in this world who, when they see something terrible coming for someone else, steps into its path. They don't always wear uniforms. They don't always have training. Sometimes they are mechanics in their 50s who used to be Marines. Sometimes they are the people you have walked past 100 times without thinking twice. And the strangest, most beautiful thing about them is that they don't think of themselves as heroes. They think they did the only thing a normal person would have done. They are wrong. Most people don't do it. Most people decide that someone else will handle it. Most people decide the risk to themselves is too high, the chance of being wrong too embarrassing, the inconvenience too great. Most people convince themselves that the universe will sort it out without them. If you ever get the chance to be the kind of person who steps into the path of the thing coming for someone else, take it. Make the call. Knock on the door. Tell the friend, the sister, the stranger, the coworker. Don't let the fear of being wrong keep you from being right. Because somewhere out there, right now, someone is asleep in a bed they think is safe, and the only thing standing between them and what's coming for them is whether someone else is brave enough to pick up the phone. If this story reached you, send it to one person, just one, who you would want calling you at 3 a.m. if your life was on the line. Don't explain why. Just send it. They'll understand when they hear it. And tell me down below if you have someone like that in your life. I want to know they exist. I want to know there are more of them out there than the news ever lets us see.